Services Marketing, MKT 625. Lecture number 29.
Assalamu alaikum Khawateen o Hazrat. This is Wasim Ahsan, your instructor for the course Services Marketing MKT 625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. I welcome you to lecture number 29. We have learned by now very well as to what an operational position is. We have looked into the why and how sides of it, meaning why it is needed and how we choose for one. We also know that we have three different options to choose from, and it is one that we really emphasize on. Now, this is not to say that we kind of exclude others in terms of our focus and attention. No, we have to emphasize all the positions in terms of achieving cost efficiency, productivity. We should go for customization wherever we can, but then we have to keep in mind that we do not make our life unnecessarily challenging. We get into customization only if the nature of the product happens to be such that it is varied, and the service product that we are going to offer to our customers is going to be different every time we deal with a new customer. At the same time, we also have to work for very high quality, both in terms of the technical features and also the functional dimension of the service. Now, after having said all that, meaning that we should be good at all the positions, the point that is to be stressed is that we have to pick just one in order to emphasize. Because when we start emphasizing that position, that brings us very much in line with the operational characteristics of the product that we have chosen to develop and sell. Also, what happens is an appropriate operating position brings us into just about right marketing positioning when we start talking and communicating with the outer environment, meaning with all the stakeholders and our customers. The right communication strategy becomes the basis of talking about the right marketing position which brings to life the product in such a way that customers could find everything very much in line with their expectations. So this is the benefit that we really can derive if we choose the rightmost operational position. We have gone through all the steps of the complexity and divergence which really form the basis of picking the one to emphasize, and now we have to talk about a few more elements which really can bring the operational position to life. What are those elements? I'm going to talk about those one by one in relation to all the positions that we may take, the meaning in relation to any position out of the three that we may take for our services. Those are operational goals, the location of the facility, the layout of the facility, and the job design. These are the four elements or the components which really form the basis of bringing any operational position to life. We have taken the position, we are very clear about the sequence and the number of steps, and we know where we can be divergent and where we cannot be, but we have to have certain goals in order to get to the destination that we have carved out for the organization. And by the same token, we have to go for a location which is just about the right location in the light of the operational position that we have chosen for ourselves, and also the layout of the facility so that we really can satisfy our customers in light of the nature of service and in light of the characteristics of the customer base that we are dealing with. These are the factors that we have to take into consideration, I would say, the very serious consideration while we are putting things together in order to bring the operational position to life. And the fourth element, which happens to be the most important element, and that's the one which really puts meat or flesh onto the skeleton of the blueprinting, is the job design, meaning how we are going to design the job in terms of the requirements of division of labor, or the specialization of the job process, or the automation, computer support, and so on and so forth. And with the help of that, we really can put flesh onto the skeleton which we have developed already, and that is known as the blueprint. What could be the operational goals, and how could we choose the location of the facility and go for the layout of that particular facility, meaning developing the physical evidence, and what are the elements of the job design are the ones which we should be trying to understand one by one in relation to the particular operational position that we may choose. Let us talk first of all about the cost efficiency position and what should be the goals for cost efficiency. I think it is extremely easy and very obvious that the goals that we pick for cost efficiency operational position should be the ones that are very much in line with the concept of high efficiency and productivity. So in other words, our goals have got to be the very high volumes so that we really can go for high efficiency and productivity. If the volumes are not high, if there is something wrong with the service design, or there is something wrong with the location of the facility, we will not go for the kind of volumes which really provide us with the platform to achieve the level of efficiency and productivity that we envisage as part of the goals. And keep in mind that these goals are quite very qualitative in nature and very strategic. In other words, at this particular moment, we're not really getting into the financials or the numbers at the side of the goals. These are overall broad strategic goals in relation to the operational position that we have chosen. So we can say, in other words, that the broad goal of this particular operational position is the very high efficiency and productivity which we can achieve only with the help of very high volumes. And that really brings us to the location of the facility. Well, again, very much in line with the operational position of the service product, we've got to identify a location which enables us to go for very high volumes. If we choose a wrong location which may not offer us the kind of volumes that we need to achieve high efficiency and productivity, we are not going to be able to achieve our goals. So the goal here in terms of identification of the location is not to go for a very posh kind of an area or the best area in town. You may as well do that, but the essence of the goal here is to go for a location which really can assure for us very high volumes of sales, because only with the help of high volumes we are going to be in a position to achieve the overall goal of cost efficiency. Another thing which the many providers follow is draw a distinction between the on-stage component and the backstage component. What they do is they go to an area which is just about the most appropriate in terms of high volumes, and don't forget the fact that any area which is going to provide us with the kind of volumes that I'm talking about has to be an expensive area. It cannot be a cheap area, and therefore providers could have the option of dividing their services into the two components that we have looked into with the help of the blueprint, meaning the on-stage component and the backstage component. The on-stage area can be situated at a place which we think is the most appropriate in terms of sales volumes, whereas the backstage component can be situated in an area which is cheap. And this is what you might have noticed in terms of the many bakeries or coffee shops. The area which is the reflection of the contact personnel area, where interaction between the front-end employees and the customers that take place, is the one which could be kind of small, narrow, or utility oriented. In other words, it may not be a very big area only because of the fact that it is extremely expensive. Now, as long as that particular size of the facility can justify the rendering of the service in terms of the sales volumes, it is fine. In case it is short on servicing the customers in a very efficient way, then it has to be enlarged. That is not the point here. The point here is the distinction between the two components, meaning the on-stage component and the backstage component, only from the standpoint of achieving certain economies. Because the operational goal is to achieve cost efficiencies, this could be one of the ways. All I said was that in order to be able to achieve those efficiencies, you also have to take into account the size of the facility so that it really is compatible with the traffic of your customers who are walking into the facility and providing you with the right level of sales volumes. And that brings us to the importance of the layout of the facility. How should we go ahead with designing the layout? I think it is again very obvious that everything has to be done very much in line with the operational goals. Keeping in view that we are dealing with cost efficiency, we have to deal with the two major components of the service in a way that the on-stage component maximizes the number of customers served and the backstage component maximizes productivity. The combination of a high number of customers served with achievement of a high level of productivity automatically is going to present us with very high efficiencies, and that is what we are looking for in terms of our operational goals. How does that happen? Well, because we design the facility in a way that we have the right number of people doing the same job. Just take the example of walking into a fast food restaurant, and you will see that there are certain locations where you have more than a couple of order takers, whereas there are locations where there are just about one or two order takers. This has been designed in line with the projected volume of sales of your service. Now, once you have started selling the service and with the kind of growth pattern that you are experiencing, you always can bring about changes in the layout or in the sequence of the process and so on and so forth. But the importance of this very point is that the number of customers who are served within the facility has to be maximized, and at the same time the process has got to work very flawlessly in a way that productivity gets maximized with no errors and complaints from the customer. Well, there could be complaints because we know we're dealing with services, and with the best of intentions of putting together the kind of processes that I'm talking about and the strategies that are rooted into the quality orientation of the company, we still have complaints, and we have to stage recovery strategies. But the cost efficiency service process has got to be industrialized in such a way that there are minimal chances of making mistakes, because the idea is to save costs and not make mistakes. Therefore, we have to emphasize doing things right the very first time, because it is a question of achieving efficiencies on every front. Not only the costs, it also is quality, and quality does not mean that we compromise the sequence or that we do not care about the cost factor. As a matter of fact, the cost advantage which you may derive out of any given operational position is of paramount importance. And wherever you think you can cut costs or save costs, you have to go for that. And that is kind of an objective which is given in every situation. More on this in a few moments. The next element of the operational position is the job design, and like I said, this is the one which enables us to put some flesh onto the skeleton of the blueprint, because with the help of this design we define so many different things. This is something which really enables us to look into the importance of the division of labor as to which parts of the job are to be done by people who are not very highly skilled, and which are the parts which are to be handled by those who are highly skilled. And this is where the concept of specialization specialization also comes in. We do need specialists, and we have to see to it that those specialists could also have the ability of looking at services from the standpoint of inseparability. So in other words, if somebody happens to be an expert on marketing matters, that person also has to be good at understanding of operations, because of the characteristic of inseparability of the service, failing which the service is going to be affected and the quality is not going to be the one which you envisaged, and at the end of the day you're going to have customers who may not be as satisfied as they should have been in the very first place. So the job specialization is something which is very highly significant, and that also brings us to the point of cross training. People are to be cross-trained, especially those people who are the front-end people, meaning the ones who form the on-stage component in so many different jobs and areas. And the fact is that the major areas are that of marketing and sales and operations. So in other words, if a marketing person has to be a good operations person, it has to be vice versa. An operations person also should be good at marketing and sales concepts, so that if need be, they can perform any particular part of the job which is inseparable, because marketing and sales are intertwined in services. That is something which has to be supported with a certain level of automation, computer support, and any other techniques that might provide us with a platform to achieve cost efficiencies. And as a matter of fact, this is precisely owing to this particular reason that many organizations that sit in quadrant 1 of low, meaning low complexity and low divergence, get into automation. That is the reason that you have computerized systems in these kind of industries. May those be fast food services or retail banking and so on and so forth. Let's take the example of the retail banking all over again. The reason they put up these ATMs is not because they just want to show off the latest technology that they have acquired. They get into that concept because they can get into the consistency of service, meaning a service which is offered on very consistent quality parameters. And not only that, you can offer so many different benefits with the help of that ATM, and that's something I talked about in the previous lecture. And that is the reason the computerization relating so many services, may that be travel services or may that be fast food services, like I said earlier, is the one which offers us those benefits. So while we are designing the job, what is important is that we minimize the front-end employees' functions and maximize productivity. Now this is very much against what I said earlier in terms of the facility layout. What I said was, just to keep confusion away from my teaching, what I said was that in terms of the facility layout, you've got to maximize the number of customers served. Now, this does not mean that you get into too many different steps and you make the sequence very lengthy and therefore complex. No, you have to keep complexity away, meaning it has to be as less complex as possible when it comes to designing the job. I'm talking about the designing function now, and therefore you've got to minimize the on-stage component. You minimize the on-stage component with the help of computerization, automation, and where you cannot avoid having the human interaction, because without that no service can be, most of the services can be offered. You have to minimize the number of steps. And this is where I gave you the example earlier of the fast food restaurant, where you walk into the facility and do everything interacting with just the one person until the time you get the food and take it to the table of your liking and choice. So this is an example of keeping the number of steps minimized. The reason you like to keep the steps minimized because you want to increase efficiency. And you can increase efficiency by having a simple procedure or a process. And also make no mistake about the fact that you cannot control your customers. This is the component where interaction takes place, and therefore it has its own dynamics. You cannot control your customers the way you can control your colleagues and the people working as part of the backstage component. That is something which can be controlled, and that is controlled with the help of the very mechanized, highly industrialized steps that they are performing. So when it comes to the job design, industrialization of the process, about which I have talked on a couple of occasions, is the one that is followed in terms of the job design of cost efficiency operational position. So the concept of keeping the front end kind of minimized and the backstage component highly maximized should be clear to all of us, because we are dealing with customer, and therefore as less steps as possible in relation to the on-stage component. And when it comes to productivity, I'm not saying that we make the process unnecessarily long and complex. No, the process in terms of fast food in particular, the example about which I'm talking about, is the one which should not be complex. And that is why all over the world, by services, the marketing managers, this industry is ranked as a low complexity and low divergence industry. Do not be mistaken by the sheer appearance or by the looks of the kitchen, which is very comprehensive the moment you walk into the facility and get a glimpse of the equipment which is placed there. The fact remains that the process is not complex, it is simple. It has as many steps as are absolutely essential and inevitable. But then you also are industrializing the process where every person is doing the same thing over and over again by not making mistakes and keeping everything highly mechanized in place and taking place in the same form and shape and fashion as it happened the previous time. So these are some of the important factors which you take into consideration while you design your service. This is not all. Another thing which you get into is batch processing. You might be kind of surprised when I talk about batch processing in relation to the services. Well, in particular, when you are dealing with hybrid services, and again, I would like to take you back to the example of fast food. You do get into the batches of production. You produce a certain number of sandwiches, keep them in the warming bins, and deliver those to the walking in customers. You do not really come up with a batch which is not compatible with the quality parameters. In other words, you have to produce as many sandwiches as you think are going to be of as good quality as the customer wants, so that you do not fall short of the expectations of your customer. But this certainly is one of the operational strategic measures taken by providers while they design the jobs of people who form the part of the support process. Another thing that you might like to do is component purchasing. Let's talk about bakeries, coffee shops, and those fast food chains that might find it more economical to buy in bulk certain parts of the food chain. Because it is economical to do that. Not only it is economical, it also is very efficient in terms of the production process. That precisely is the reason that many fast food chains do not like to have their own bakeries, because that is something which is a specialization of somebody else, and they rather look at that as a separate industry and buy those components from that industry, meaning they outsource that part of the food chain to somebody else. This certainly is one of the measures that the many chains employ in order to be more efficient. The only trick here is it should not offer you unnecessary and undue challenges of the supply chain management and financial management. In other words, while you get into the logistics and storage and receipts and deliveries of those components which are outsourced to somebody else, you do not really get into kind of challenges which make the whole job more difficult than if you had taken all those activities by yourself. That is what I meant by the undue challenges of supply chain. At the same time, you should not be looking into some undue financial management challenges, meaning it should not make the whole exercise more expensive. It should be very efficient in terms of both the areas that I'm talking about, meaning the supply chain and financial management. So as long as they are not at odds with the operational goals of the cost efficiency, it doesn't matter. And as a matter of fact, you should go for that kind of outsourcing to somebody else, because that is one less or as many less headaches as you have outsourced to someone else. The next position is that of customization. And if you have a clear understanding of the concept of customization, which I have talked in great details over the last couple of lectures, then I think you shouldn't really have any difficulty in trying to envision the kind of operational goals that you should come up with for this particular position. Well, as the terminology suggests, you are out to satisfy each and every customer who happens to be different, and therefore you have to come up with those goals very much in line with customization, because you are developing a service and delivering it very much in line with the specific requirements and expectations of one particular customer, and therefore the goals have got to be very similar with the concept. The facility location is not extremely critical in relation to this particular operational position, although it is very important. You can be anywhere that you like to be at, because it basically is the common pool of competencies which the consultants offer to their customers. And it is because of that they are attracted to the company which is providing the particular service that we are talking about. And therefore the location is not really critical, as it really is in case of cost efficiency operational position. What is important is the layout of the facility, because we still have to make a distinction between the on-stage component and the off-stage component. The on-stage component has to be the one who are the people dealing with your customers, interacting with them and discussing with them whatever part of the service they want to discuss with you. So in other words, it is of high importance to have people as the front-end people. If you have taken up this position of customization of that caliber, that they really have a clear understanding of the overall nature of the service and the overall character of the organization, because they can be asked any questions by the customers. The backstage people also have to be extremely good at their jobs, meaning the professional side of their jobs. And the reason that we try to make a distinction between backstage and onstage in relation to customization as well is that you have to have a particular number of people only who should be dealing with the customers. It shouldn't be that customers walking into the facility start talking with anyone they run into or look at. That should not be the kind of layout. The layout should be such that the customers walking into the facility feel kind of inhibited talking with those they're not really supposed to be talking with. So meaning they should be walking right into those who are the front-end people and are the ones who are supposed to take care of customers. The job design does dictate that we bring about a distinction between the on-stage component and backstage component. However, the fact remains that all the people, whether they are part of the on-stage component or the backstage component, happen to be very highly professional employees. And professional employees are supposed to be working in a very productive way. Although we cannot cut costs and achieve the kind of efficiencies which we achieve in relation to the operational position of cost efficiency, we still should make an effort to go for cost savings by being very productive. And therefore, the distinction between the on-stage and the backstage employees. The ones who are part of the support process, they should not be disturbed by customers. That is something which really draws the line between the on-stage and the backstage component, and makes it very important for the on-stage component only to be dealing with the customers. Let us now talk about the third position, which is that of operational service quality. Now, you know that we have two different dimensions on which we can talk about the service quality. The one is that of technical features, whereas the other one is all about quality dimensions. And in light of the nature of the product and the specialization of the company, it makes the decision as to which dimension it has to emphasize on, meaning whether the technical merits are to be highlighted or it is the functional side which is to be brought into a limelight in relation to the customers. Well, if the company has opted for the technical features, then the goal has got to be very much goal and productivity oriented, just like it was the case in relation to cost efficiency position. Because we are talking about high quality, we are trying to deliver very high quality, but then at the same time we have to have very high level of productivity, and that has to be the goal of the company, because it is emphasizing the technical merits, and technical merits means it is more concerned about the outcome of the service. This is not to say that we are not really concerned about the outcome, because when we talk about the functional dimension, all I'm saying is that we emphasize that particular position. However, if functional position is taken by the company, then the goal has to be a little bit more towards the customization side, because the company is more concerned about the quality dimensions, and therefore it is emphasizing interaction with its customers. It is trying to emphasize that it is reliable, it is very assuring, and it is empathetic while it delivers the service. Now, the interesting thing about these two different directions or the kinds of goals is that the essence remains the same. When you talk about the service process, it doesn't mean that you're not talking about reliability, assurance, and empathy, and so on and so forth. You're just emphasizing on the outcome, and that is going to be clear with the help of 2 or 3 different examples that I'm just going to give you for your clarity. An insurance company might like to talk about the streamlined the nature of their processes, which are supported by a high level of automation, computerized systems, and so on and so forth when it comes to reimbursement of claims. I've talked about so many different things in this particular statement, but what it really means is that when a company starts talking about quick reimbursement of claims, and it also talks in support of that, of the processes it has in place, it is talking about the accuracy, it is talking about the quickness of the service, and all those related dimensions which customers like to look at when it comes to getting the reimbursement from the company. So this is a company which has taken the technical position and is emphasizing the outcome of the service, which is the reimbursement. And it says, well, we are very quick to see when you lodge a claim, and we can give you the money within 48 hours. Whether or not they really can do it is to be seen, but this is a position. And if they really are in a position to do so, then the marketing position they have taken really sits on the technical merits, and it is very compatible with the operational position the company has chosen. Conversely, there is another example by another insurance company which talks about the relationships. And by talking about the relationships, it starts getting into things like they really care about the customer. And by talking about the care factor, they try to highlight the assurance dimension or the empathy dimension of the service. And by talking so, they also try to prove that they are a reliable company. Although they have taken a different kind of a route to prove that they are a reliable and an assuring company, they are not talking about their processes. And customers walking into this company, they may also be in a position to get reimbursement on time, but they have chosen a different route. They believe in relationship marketing. They like to develop the one-on-one and one-to-one relationships whereby they can talk with their customers and spend more time on relationship building. It all depends upon the culture of the company and the shape the company has taken over the years in relation to technology it has employed or in relation to the training of staff it has in place. If the company culture is that their staff is more outgoing and they are better at relationship building, they should get into this kind of a strategy. If the case is otherwise, they should be taking the position of the technical merits because both the companies have got to be good at the technical merits. If a company gets into relationship building, doesn't mean that the company should avoid the technical side of the service. It has to be as good as the other ones, but it only is a question of which side they are emphasizing. And I think with the help of this example, it should be clear that what I really mean by taking up the position on technical merits or on quality dimensions. Another example of the functional side could be an insurance company talking about the diversity of the service products that they offer. They might extend their the product line by introducing insurance of the agricultural produce or livestock, for example. And by talking about the diversity, what they're doing is prompting the population, which is inclusive of their existing customers and the prospects that can turn into new customers, to come to the company, educate themselves about the diversity of the products that they are offering, and thereby having an opportunity of developing good relationships. So this could be another example of the functional side if it is emphasized by this particular company, and how it really can get the company into getting an attractive promotional mileage out of the functional dimensions of the service. So it all depends which position do you opt for, and after you have exercised the option, the essence of the goals remain the same. And the goals are that you have to satisfy your customers, whether you take the route of the technicality or you take the route of the functional side. However, these two different sides are going to have their implications when it comes to the job design and the service facility and the facility layout. Well, if the service is emphasizing on the technical side, then the facility location is going to be very much in line with what I've talked about, the cost efficiency things. And if the company has decided to go the customization route, then it has to act accordingly. And I think that we are clear by now how the facility should look like and what should be the kind of location for the service. The most important thing here is that whatever is the location and whatever is the layout, it must reflect very high image, because we basically are emphasizing on the quality of service. If we fail to project the kind of image compatible with the position that we have taken, there is a conflict, and we've got to see to it that our strategies are free of any the possibility of conflicts. The job design is very interesting from the quality point of view, because you minimize the on-stage component if you have taken the position of technical features, because you are concentrating more on your processes and the on-stage component, and that particular situation has got to be minimized so that the influence on maximization of productivity can be exercised in this particular situation. However, if the case is otherwise, then you must enhance the customer contact component. That is the one which I talked about, the minimizing in relation to technical features. However, if you're dealing with the functional side, you have to enhance that component. You have to have the more qualified people who are dealing with your customers, because you have taken the position of more or less customization, and therefore the people have got to have those communication skills that they are in a position to answer all the questions posed by your the customers, and they should be the ones who can satisfy them. And this is the essence of the job design of the quality service. Other important the denominator of the quality job design is job specialization. And in bigger organizations, the cross-training, computerization and automation also figure very prominently. You employ these techniques basically to achieve the different kinds of objectives, and that's why I said it is very interesting. If you are employing the computerization, automation, and resorting to all the latest developments and have taken the position of the technical side, then you need these kind of supports for the process which should be very highly industrialized, and a process which is geared toward cost efficiencies. However, if you have taken the position of customization in order to emphasize the service quality, then you need automation and computerization in order to enhance interaction with your customers. Let's go back to the example of the livestock and agricultural insurance, the two new service products that are introduced by the company. And just imagine the kind of data they should be coming up with and developing in order to know how the service is going to work, and the kinds of customers they should be dealing with, and the kind of information they have to provide their customers with when they come there to educate themselves, so that the company is in a position to develop good relationships. So computerization and automation in this particular situation is serving a very different kind of an end, and it is working on a very different note in comparison with when it is needed just to have a highly optimal and maximized kind of an industrialized process to save costs. This is all about the quality service design, and I hope very fervently that our understanding of the service design and the operational positions that are available to us is pretty much clear. And with that clarity and understanding, I would now like to draw your attention to the role of personnel in service design. So we are not yet fully done with the service design. There's so many parameters and so many inputs and so many different aspects that we have to take into consideration, and all those are basically concerned with the three variables of the marketing mix that happen to be the additional variables of marketing mix in services marketing, and those are people, processes, and physical evidence. The function of people and processes are the ones that make the physical evidence also play an extremely important role. So in other words, what I'm saying is if the personnel that we have inside of the facility are not really up to the mark, then we have something wrong with the service design. So let us look at the role of the personnel. They play an extremely important role, and we are very clear about the two different components that they play their role in the form of. The first component is that of on-stage component, whereas the other one is the backstage component. And the important thing is that the on-stage the component has got to be the one with people skills. They've got to have a pretty good knowledge of the overall service, like I said earlier, and they must know the objectives and goals of the overall organization so that they are in a position to influence the customers. The influence is going to bring customers to the facility and actuate them into buying the service, and then providing these very personnel with the opportunity of developing positive relationships and making those customers kind of loyal customers, and so on and so forth. So the influence factor is dependent upon the quality of personnel that we have for the on-stage process. And another thing which is extremely important for the on-stage the component is that they've got to have a complete mastery of the characteristic of inseparability. In other words, if they happen to be the marketing people, they should be good at operations and vice versa, because the inseparability really highlights itself in services, and the on-stage component from that point of view should be the one, or rather has to be the one which really can handle and manage this character of services so effectively that customers could go back very highly satisfied. Another important role which on stage the personnel play is that of empathy. If they can listen and talk from the standpoint of the customer, it gives the customers a feeling of the satisfaction, because these employees, meaning the front-end employees or the on-stage component, is able to identify with the thoughts of their customers. And when customers get the feeling that the provider is empathizing with them, they get a very high level of satisfaction. And the fact is that even if they have come back to the company with certain complaints, they are more probable to become even more loyal than your existing customers. And if they happen to be existing customers, they're going to be more loyal than they were before. So the empathy is one thing which should be the strong side of the on-stage component. And they have to have, from that point of view, the very high level of hearing and communication skills, so that they can listen to the customers very intently by not missing the point of complaint that may have any serious bearings on the strategic the movements of the company. And at the same time, they have to have communication skills to be able to register those complaints and pass those on to all those who are responsible to fix and make corrections to the complaints customers have lodged. Just imagine your on-stage component not having the right kind of communication skills and messing up a complaint only because they communicated in the wrong way. And the support staff might look at it from the one standpoint, whereas the people who have communicated that complaint look at that from a different standpoint, and the customer certainly has yet another standpoint, and therefore the gap. This is not to undermine the importance of the support staff. The support staff has got to be extremely professional and good at the core jobs that they are performing. The importance here is that of the flawless communication that must take place between the on-stage component and the backstage component, so that there is no misunderstanding. So while we look at the strategic implications, it becomes very important that the good staff members, whether they form part of the on-stage component or the backstage component, have got to be retained by the company, because it is a huge challenge for any company dealing in services marketing, that good people have got to be retained, and good people are to be looked as very high value capital assets. So it all depends upon the company whether they look upon their personnel as high value capital assets, or just as the parts of a mechanical process which has to go on in any case, whether people stay with the company or they leave the company. Well, it is very obvious that the former is a beautiful strategy, whereas the latter is an erroneous strategy which can land any company into the ground. And that is something that has to be avoided. What is it that we should be doing in order to make sure that the people are retained by the company is going to be part of the strategies when I talk about the personnel strategies and so on and so forth. But for the time being, I'm going to emphasize very briefly on the challenge which really presents itself to the companies in terms of retaining the good people. Because when people start leaving the company, it adds to their costs. it adds to the cost because hiring new people is always costlier, and then the transition is not smooth because of the fact that people do take time in order to come into the mainstream of the processes and become a very lubricated part of the whole process. And therefore we should try to retain people. When the people, meaning new employees, come into the process does not remain as productive as it was, which means it causes hiccups, and we must see to it that there is no disruption to the productivity which we already have achieved, whether we are into the position of cost efficiency or into service quality or even customization. The fact remains that we should try hard to retain our good workers. When good workers leave, they can take the company into another loss situation, which makes it a double loss situation, and that is when they take good customers with them to our competitors. And nothing could be worse than seeing your good customers go to your competitors. So it is a double loss situation which companies must avoid. There are certain motivational characteristics of the content of the job which we should consider while we design the job content as part of the overall service design. And having given due consideration to all those factors, we can be in a situation whereby we keep our staff members fully motivated. Even if they're not fully motivated, we should not create conditions, or we should rather keep such conditions from cropping up that actuate people to start thinking in terms of exit. So the staff attrition is something that has to be given due weight by employing certain strategic moves which can keep people most of the time, if not all the time, motivated and not thinking of leaving their jobs. Because you will recall from one of the previous lectures that motivated staff employees could have a tendency of working more enthusiastically and thus keeping the existing customers really glued to the company. And that is the beauty of the relationships that we develop with our staff members, and staff members in turn developing those relationships with our good customers. What are those the motivational characteristics? I'm going to talk about those in the next lecture for the shortage of time today, and therefore would like to give you a recap of what I've talked about in today's lecture. It has been a continuation of the importance of the operational position that we must choose in order to emphasize on one position out of the three that are available to us. And those are of cost efficiency, the customization, and service quality. Service quality can be viewed from two different aspects. The one is that of technical features, whereas the other one is that of functional dimension of quality. And we should then have the elements of the operational strategy that should be put together very much in line with the operational position that we have chosen. If we have chosen cost efficiency, then the four elements of location of the facility, and of course before that the goals, the design of the facility, and the job design could have to be such that they must work very efficiently for that particular position. And we also have learned that the elements of one particular position cannot be interchanged with another. In other words, these the four elements put together for the position of cost efficiency should not work and will not work for the position of customization, and vice versa. Another thing that we have learned from today's lecture is the importance of the processes and people. The fact is, as lectures go by, we realize the importance of these two variables to our benefit. And as you know, the services marketing is all about the people, processes, and physical evidence. With that, I would like to call it a day and thank you for your attendance, and look forward to talking with you again in the next lecture.